So continuing to look at lines from the 7-point mind training text. So I always like this one. It's kind of intriguing. It says, "Don't put the load of a Zhou on an ox." So this comes from a part of the world where there are many high mountains and deep valleys and steep cliffs and not many roads. So if you need to transport goods from one place to another, even nowadays, you use pack animals like yaks, zous, oxen, and horses. So a zhou is a cross between a yak and an ox. So it's a really big, strong animal, even bigger and stronger than an ox. And I don't know how much a zhou can carry, but let's say 200 pounds. And an ox can carry maybe 120 pounds. So if you try to put a zhou-size load of goods on the back of an ox, it would probably cause suffering, maybe even injury. And Tralek Rinpoche, in his commentary to this text, says that Tibetans valued zhous more than oxen, so they would be more willing to overload their oxen. And maybe for us, in our part of the world, we could change the words and say, don't put the load of a horse on a pony, or don't put the load of a pickup truck on a compact car. That might be more something we could relate to. But anyway, the meaning of this advice is to not dump our responsibilities onto others or get other people to do jobs that we're supposed to do, but maybe we don't want to. And instead, we should fulfill our responsibilities, take responsibility for what is ours. In other words, don't pass the buck. So what are some of the ways that we might do this? So one way would be blaming others for mistakes that we make. So we've seen lots of cases of this over the past 4 years, for example, in politics. And we probably find it pretty sickening. Other examples can be found in the Me Too movement, where many people, especially women, have reported being abused, especially sexually, often by famous people or people in powerful positions. And these people who were accused usually respond by denying any wrongdoing and putting the blame back on the victims or blaming others like the media or their rivals. And again, such behavior is not a pleasant thing to observe. In fact, we probably find it disgusting. But probably the most common form of this behavior is simply getting another person, like someone who's younger, less powerful or influential, someone lower than you on the totem pole, to do some job that you were supposed to do, but don't want to do. Maybe you find it boring, uninteresting, unpleasant, or beneath you. Why should someone with my qualities and qualifications have to do this job? Don't they know who I am? Why can't so-and-so do it? They are much less qualified than me. And in Tralek Rinpoche's commentary, he also warned against playing favorites. Due to a lack of equanimity, we might give more work or the more unpleasant tasks to someone we dislike or feel indifferent to, and give less work or more pleasant tasks to someone we like. So we also have to be on the lookout for that. So when thinking about this on my own and trying to find examples, one of the jobs I was asked to do here at the Abbey is helping with the recycling. So in the kitchen we have all these bins for paper and cans and plastic and so on. So my job is to take it out of those bins, put it into bags, and then put it in the bins outside. And normally I'm fine about doing this. I'm happy to chip in with the work at the Abbey because there is so much work to do and everybody's very busy. Also, it's nice to do something physical rather than sitting at my desk all day. And I really like the fact that we do try to recycle as many things as possible. It's really good for the environment. But a few times I've noticed in my mind thoughts like, is it right that I should be doing this kind of work? I, who have been a nun for so many years, have learned so much Dharma. I've been a resident teacher and taught all over the world. Shouldn't one of the younger and less experienced people do this? So these kind of thoughts have just popped up, and I didn't let my mind go down that road and then try to push the job off on somebody else. But if we are not careful, and if these thoughts come up in our mind, and there may be other circumstances, contributing circumstances, like you're in a bad mood that day, maybe you see a younger person being promoted to a more important job, it could be difficult to restrain the mind, and before we know it, we are well on the way to transferring our load to someone else who might already be overloaded. And I was really grateful for the story that Venerable Damcha pointed out in a recent BBC, which comes from the book Novice to Master, stories about life in Zen monasteries. And there was one story about a Zen master who kept working even after he became 80 years old. And he only stopped because his students hid his tools. So I guess in the Zen monastery, everybody works, like in the garden and the kitchen and so on. And then after he stopped working, he also stopped eating, saying, a day without work, a day without food. So even in monasteries, Buddhist monasteries, everybody is expected to do some work. And I was thinking, one reason I don't mind working, even washing dishes, cleaning floors, cleaning toilets, and so on, is probably the example of my mother, who gave up a very interesting career at a time when not many women even had careers, to cook and clean and do laundry. And mostly she did these things joyfully because she really loved her family. And she also had the kind of personality that didn't like to be waited on. And I saw this even at the end of her life when she was ill with cancer. She really wanted to, do as much as she could for herself and not have other people do things for her. And that's something I really admired in her, because I've heard stories of parents who were very demanding and inconsiderate of their children, and always trying to get their children to do things for them, even though it's very inconvenient for the children. And that really causes a lot of suffering and problems for the children. So I myself always try to do things for myself, and I don't have the habit of passing the buck. Still, we do need to be mindful and notice if in our mind there arise thoughts of disliking the work that we're doing, finding it boring or meaningless, or thinking that this kind of work is unsuitable for someone like me. So if we do see those kind of thoughts coming up in our mind, just notice them and then do something to bring about a change in our mind. There's so many Dharma practices we can do while we are working. For example, just being mindful, watching our mind, watching our thoughts, recognizing what might be negative and possibly harmful, and working on that, trying to bring about a more positive state of mind. And then we have all these practices in the mind training tradition, like thinking that the dirt or whatever it is we're cleaning away represents the stains and the defilements in the minds of ourselves and all sentient beings, and we're cleaning this out so that we can all become enlightened. And as Venerable Jampa mentioned in her recent BBC, it's really important to be joyful in whatever work we do. And it's definitely possible to do this just by changing our perspective, changing our thoughts. And that's the whole idea of mind training. But then I thought of another way of understanding this line from the text, not so much in terms of passing work to others, but just in terms of ourselves. That it's possible that we might take on ourselves more than we are capable of, And I certainly had this experience myself when I first started learning Buddhism and becoming a nun. I looked at my teacher, who was just an amazing person, and I thought, I have to be like him. I mean, nobody told me that. He didn't tell me that. Nobody else told me that. It was my own mind who said that, you know. So I was trying so hard to be just like him, to practice just like him, and I just completely wore myself out and got a really bad case of lung, which is like stress. And so it took me years to recover from that and learn to say to myself, it's wonderful what he's doing. I admire it. I respect it. I hope one day I'll be able to be like that, but I can't be like that now. I just don't have the same level of knowledge and experience and spiritual development. So trying to do more than we're really capable of. That's like putting, you know, a greater load on ourselves than we are able to carry. And also, maybe another example of this, I once heard a talk by a man who's both a Western psychologist and also a long-term practitioner of Buddhism. And he spoke about some Western people who come from dysfunctional families where there may have been alcoholism, drug addiction, codependence. And they grew up in a situation where they always felt like they had to take care of other people and didn't learn how to take care of themselves. And then they come to the Dharma, especially Mahayana Buddhism, especially the Bodhisattva's teachings. They hear about bodhisattvas and how bodhisattvas just totally dedicate themselves to others and doing things for others and don't take care of themselves. And they just jump right in and start doing that. That's for me. That's what I want to do. But it goes wrong because they've never learned how to take care of themselves. And I actually knew a woman who had this experience. She came from a very dysfunctional family and was abused as a child. And she started going to a Buddhist center and, heard about the bodhisattva idea and was just started, doing everything she could to help others, volunteering for this and that and trying to help people. And it all went wrong. And finally, she realized that her motivation was wrong. She didn't have the bodhisattva motivation. She was desperate for love and affection and approval, and that's why she was getting involved in all these things. So she realized she had to step back and do less for others and learn how to take care of herself. So that's a problem that at least some people in the West might be prone to, and we have to be on the lookout for. So I think it's important both when giving work to others, but also taking upon oneself work, responsibilities, practices, and so on and so forth, that we do this with as much kindness, compassion, consideration, and wisdom as we can, and really assess what this person, the other person or yourself, is capable of doing, and not try to overload anyone.